5 o'clock, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening. Glad you're here tonight. I'd like to ask you to open up a songbook to number 693. 693. I'll sing that as an invitation song here in just a moment. 693. 693. Before we have our invitation tonight, let's bow together and say a prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for this day, and I thank you for the time that we have to spend together now. I thank you for this opportunity, for those who have made the decision to be here, to come be a part of the work, the worship, and the learning that we are doing. And I'm thankful for those who are actively working to provide those opportunities for us. And I ask you to help us to take advantage of them, not just here tonight, but in every opportunity that they present themselves. Lord, I want to bring Larry to you tonight as he's asked to be remembered with the stress at his job, and ask us to pray for him. And I want to mention that you know the situation and the best outcome there, that you would be a part of his help. Help us to be the kind of people that you want us to be. Help us to be that city that's been set on a hill so that we can shine like stars in the night sky. Forgive us when we fall and give us the strength to stand and try again. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. If you turn in your Bible to Nehemiah chapter 4. Nehemiah chapter 4, before we have our melting pot classes here in the auditorium, Bill Bagents will continue to teach on helping the hurting. The finances class will be in the back corner to my left with Joe and Caitlin Creasy. And if I'm not mistaken, the singing class, Doug, tonight will be in the teen room. So if you're in the singing class tonight, you'll go through these doors into the corner classroom down this hallway. And of course, first grade through fourth grade will meet me up here in the front. We'll do our Bible Detectives class, and there are classes for the younger ones in their respective rooms as well. If you need help, certainly ask for direction, and we'll be happy to get you to the right place. I was reading in Nehemiah today, thinking about his efforts to help the city of Jerusalem. And in chapter 4, there is this opposition to the work. The neighbors around do not like to see the success that's taking place. It is going very well. Of course, actually, in chapter 4 and verse 6, it says, "We built the wall, and it was joined together to half its height because the people had a mind to work." And so just in a short amount of time, just a few short weeks, they had repaired these walls of their city that had been completely demolished, and they were beginning to make a respectable look to their city, the city of Jerusalem again. But read with me what it says starting in verse 7. "When Sanballat, Tobiah, and the Arabs, and the Ammonites, and the Ashdodites heard that the repairing of the wall of Jerusalem was going forward, that the breaches were beginning to be closed, they were very angry. They all plotted together to come and to fight against Jerusalem and cause confusion in it. So we prayed to our God and set a guard as protection against them day and night." So things are going well, but you can be certain that as soon as things are going well, somebody's going to be offended. Someone's going to try to step in and undo good work because it makes them, in their own estimation, look bad. I appreciate in verse 9 the two things that it begins with. Nehemiah began to prepare for this adversity by praying and by setting a guard. I believe you have to do both of those in order to be successful. Don't pretend like it's all up to you, and don't pretend that God will just magically take care of everything. In the further verses, it says, in Judah, it was said, the strength of those who bear the burdens is failing. There is too much rubble. By ourselves, we will not be able to rebuild the wall. So in the midst of this, there's internal strife. The folks that have been working say, guys, this is too much for us. We're getting burned out. We can't keep this up. There is too much work for just this group to be successful. And so there was internal struggles and a possibility of failure. In addition to that, The enemies say in verse number 11, they will not know or see till we come among them and kill them and stop the work. External difficulties. So they're beginning to plot. They're beginning to plan how they can stop this work from taking place. Both of these are very serious problems. What are we going to do? Nehemiah says in chapter 4 and verse 12, at that time the Jews who lived near these enemies came from all directions, said to us 10 times, return to us. So in the lower parts of the space behind the wall, in open places, I stationed the people by their clans, with their swords, their spears, and their bows. And I looked and arose and said to the nobles and the officials and the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. That's not the exact same kind of speech that Mel Gibson gives in Braveheart. I don't know what fits the bill. Here he rises to the occasion and he stirs these people to work. He says, we need more people to put their hands to the plow, and we need more people willing to be a lookout. And so everyone found their place. There was a specific task that everyone there could do. Nehemiah helped organize that and set it in motion, but they did the work. And by following that plan, and by the gracious hand of God that was with him, as he will say on multiple occasions in the book of Nehemiah, the section header for me in chapter 4, verse 15 is the work resumes. They were able to overcome the difficulties from without and from within. And tonight, by way of invitation, we're going to sing the servant song, the heart of a servant. Give me the heart of a servant, tender, faithful, and true. Fill me with love and then use me, O Lord, so that the world can see you. Do you believe we have work to be done? Do you believe the church still has a job to do? That the church still has a place, and that the people who are in the church have a job to contribute? You believe that you have a job to contribute? What is it? And how can we help you to be equipped to accomplish it? Tonight, if you have any need whatsoever to help strengthen you in your work, we want to give you the chance to ask for it right now as together we stand and as we sing. Give me the heart of a servant.
Just a couple of announcements before we're dismissed to go to our classes. If you're here and have not had the opportunity to partake of the Lord's Supper, it is prepared for you. You go through the door to my left tonight. They're going to serve you in the library. You can be dismissed at this time. I want to remind, we had our elders, deacons, men's meeting this afternoon. We appreciate all that we're able to attend. The women will not be meeting tonight following services. So make note of that. You ladies that usually come to the ladies' meeting. Missions committee meeting Wednesday night following our services. Brother John Henry will be here. He wants to meet with the missions committee. Next Saturday, we'll be putting together fruit baskets. If you'd like to help with that, we'll start at 1. If you'd like to make a financial donation to that, please see Jim. Also, if you'd like to help make a financial donation to catch up some of the children at Underwood School that are behind on their lunches, if you'll see me or if you'll see Kayla Burns, I appreciate her taking on this. And let's see if we can help some of these families that are struggling to take care of that. I think it's like $160, did you say, Kayla? And as always, we appreciate all of you that help with these different things. Ladies' Christmas party next Saturday night at 6 o'clock at the home of Sherry Watkins. And then the gifts are due for Glenwood on Sunday. So if you can have those here, and then holiday cheer will be on Tuesday night, December the 10th. 2 weeks from tonight, the security group, Jeff wants to meet back with you around 4:15 on December the 15th. So if you're working in security, please make note of that. Please do remember those of our number that are scrolling that are at home sick, different ones. Mike Frazier's been in the hospital. He did come home this afternoon. We're thankful for that. We want to continue to remember Kim May's mother now at home, Pancho at home, Nell Pinnell. I want to continue to remember her. Mary McCluskey at home, Houston Marks, Brenton Lancaster had knee surgery this past week, Winnie Cummins, Marie Darby, now on hospice at Mitchell Hollingsworth. Jane Cooper was here this morning. We're glad for that. So continue to remember all of these. Also, Margie Cox has had surgery. She's been out for 2 or 3 weeks, but be sure and let these people know that you care and have missed them. Let's be dismissed at this time to go to our different classes.
For us, tonight is anger night. We're going to think together about how to help angry people. And I'll confess with you from the get-go, that's a challenge. The number one thing I know about trying to help angry people is don't be one. You know this in marriage. It's really good if you can take turns being angry. Because if you're both angry at once, it doesn't tend to work out too well. You know, sometimes with angry children, if they're 2-year-old and having temper tantrum, you set them somewhere. Preferably not on a hot stove, but in their room or something like that. Maybe even in the corner facing the wall. And you wait until they cool down. Why do good parents do that? Take that child when he's in the tantrum and put him somewhere until he cools down. Yes, sir?
So you won't get on their level.
So you won't get on their level. There are ways I'm not supposed to say this, but the polite way I can get away with is you can't out-wallow a pig. A pig is going to win the wallowing contest every time. And if we get on their level, we're in a mess. We're in danger. Why else do we put that super angry child somewhere safe for a bit of time before we interact? So I don't lose my cool. Maybe you need to pray. Maybe you need to count to 10 or 100. Sometimes we are having a good moment and we realize that people can get so angry they're not rational in the moment. And trying to deal with an irrational person doesn't work. Normal rules and normal communication doesn't apply, and you have to wait. And God bless you if you know enough to wait and can make yourself do it, because that is a sweet, sweet thing to do. Genesis 4, Cain is angry, and I believe he gets angrier. In the process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord. Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and their fat. The Lord respected Abel and his offering. He did not respect Cain and his offering. Cain was very angry, and his face fell. So the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why has your face fallen? If you do well, you'll not be accepted. If you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it." You talk about a rich passage that reminds us of a lot of true things about anger. This one does. Cain was very angry, but he had not yet sinned in his anger. And that connects us, to Ephesians chapter 4. In your anger, do not sin. Do not give place to the devil. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. Lots of people think being angry is a sin. It is not. But it often leads to sin. And maybe that's a place we should stop for a moment. Why does anger often lead to sin? It can make us hurt somebody else, physically or verbally. Why does anger often lead to sin? Yes, sir.
Because Psalm 37, verse 8.
Read him for us, please.
Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not thyself in any wise to do evil.
Fret not yourself in any wise to do evil. There are certain people whose way of processing anger is self-generating energy. The more they process at their anger, the angrier they get. And if they have some pretty mean friends who know this, they'll poke them and make them angry from time to time just to watch the kettle boil. And that is something we don't want to do. We don't want to poke them and watch it boil. And we sure don't want to be one of those people that the more we think about it, the angrier we get. The bottom line question there for us is, who's in control? Is God in control, or are we trying to fake it? And then who's in control? Are we in control under God's hand, or is our anger in control in that moment? Why is anger something that often leads to sin? It leads us to behaviors that'll often lead to consequences. As far as I know, there are about 4 things you can do with anger. And if you know more than that, you can educate me. I don't mind learning. Some people stuff it. They pretend not to be angry by storing it inside. And stuffing anger is dangerous. And you know why it's dangerous? Explosion is coming eventually. Some people deny it. My favorite counseling client ever, who chose to deny his anger toward his wife, yelled loud enough that it scared the lady in the next office. Angry? I'm not angry. What makes you think I'm angry? His clenched fist, red-faced, veins standing out in his neck. If he could have turned into a vampire, he would have. Denial, no good there. And I'll let him call it something else. He wanted to be miffed instead of angry, and if that was the case, I would hate to see him genuinely angry. Some people release their anger in inappropriate and explosive ways. Most people will hit you verbally when they're angry. Some people will hit you physically, and some people will shoot out to shoot you, the dangerous folks there over and over again. We visited our parents over the weekend. Crenshaw County borders Lowndes County for a little bitty section. And you know, the Lowndes County sheriff was killed by a teenager. The short version of that very long story is the sheriff was called to a service station. The music was way too loud and there were some kids loitering. He asked the kids to turn the music down. And as the stories, I wasn't there, but as the stories told, the 18-year-old walked over, shot him in the face, killed him on the spot. What a tough, sad, useless, pitiful, life-altering, damaging, hurtful situation for everybody. And then, of course, the other way to handle anger is to realize anger is energy. And you don't have to know, I'm not Freudian, you don't have to know the Freud term sublimation, but I like that word, it's just fun to say. Sublimation basically is, I'm angry enough with you to break both your arms, so instead of doing that, I rake my leaves. I trim my shrubs. I'll dig a post hole. I'll plant a tree. Something physical that uses that energy in a better way. I have done shrub therapy all my life now, and it works to some degree. I've even gotten to the point where sometimes I don't pretend the little shrubs are people. I'm not supposed to do that anymore. That's not good for me. I'm a believer that we have a preference, most of us, toward how we express anger. How do we get that preference? How do we get that habit? People do make us mad. How do we get our preference? How do we develop it? We learn it. And from whom predominantly? Who we grew up with. What a blessing if you grew up in a fairly sane, non-angry home. Tremendous blessing. For all of us, what we grew up in seems normal to us, for a time at least. And I was blessed to grow up in a home that was fairly peaceful. The one rule, biggest rule in the whole house is don't mess with mama. And as long as that was the rule and clearly understood, life tended to go right well. We grew up on a farm, so if you got angry enough, weed slinger and electric fence is not such a bad thing unless you're given the section of the fence with a bahia grass. And weed slinger doesn't cut bahia grass well at all. And you can just, you can sublimate a lot of anger in short time in July doing that kind of thing. How else do we learn our anger response? Sometimes we do what worked for us before. There is a book, Winning by Intimidation. Don't recommend the process of winning by intimidation, but we all know some people who control certain situations at work or in the home just by being ugly enough nobody messes with them anymore. And they get away with it. Now, my family's pretty strange. When we find folks like that, we don't let them get away with it. And it can lead to some interesting interactions sometimes. It's sometimes not as efficient as it wants to be. We have one relative right now in another part of the state. He's in a bovine dispute. He has convinced himself that one black calf belongs to him, and his neighbor thinks this calf belongs to neighbor. Turns out neighbor's right. It does belong to him. But our relative has hired a lawyer and made the most foolish statement I've seen lately. I don't care if it has to go to the Supreme Court. I don't want to lose. You lost when you hired the lawyer. You could have given the man the calf and a buddy to go with it, and you'd have come out cheaper. Because as soon as you sign for this lawyer, you guaranteed you're going to pay more than this calf will ever be worth. Anger, it'll get us. Sometimes anger, I think people don't know we have options. Now, we got to be careful about this because I really don't want it to happen. But suppose Kevin, in his nice Christmas sweater, leaves his seat and walks up here and just slaps the foofy out of me. Now, what are my options? I can slap him back, but that's dumb. He's younger than me, and you folks know Kevin, and you like him, and I'm the stranger here. You might all beat me if I hit him. I don't want to do... What are my options? I can walk away, and I appreciate you saying walk because I'm gimpy enough I don't run anymore. It would have to be a walk away. Yes, sir? I could call for some help. And that, be honest, I would if I could still speak. And if not, Laura would. It'd work out. We've heard stories of that. Oh, my brother-in-law got a call over Thanksgiving holiday from one of his neighbors in Montgomery. One neighbor has 2 cats that run loose, and the other one has a Doberman puppy. So the guy with the Doberman puppy set out cat traps and caught one of them. And the guy who owns the cats walked over onto the neighbor's property to set him free, the cat free. They had words. The guy with the Doberman finally says to the guy with the cats, I'm going to catch both cats. I'm going to take them to the Chinese restaurant, to the back door. They'll give me $15 each for these cats, and everything will be at peace. So the guy, that's not really true, but that's what he said. I hope it's not true. The guy with the cats invited the guy with the Doberman out into the street to settle this like men, and the guy with the Doberman beat the slobber out of him. I don't recommend this. This is not a good way of handling anger. But I'm pretty proud of the Montgomery Police Department. They showed up and wanted to know who started it. And the guy that started it is the guy who got whipped. They said, y'all don't do this again, and left. Now, the people in my family, Kevin, what they say about this is Doberman will be big enough in about 2 months, and he'll solve all problems. So I'm afraid that's true. We do have options in anger. I could look at my friend Kevin and say to my friend Kevin, man, what is hurting you? This is so un-Kevin-like to walk up here and slap me. I know something's got to be hurting you. And he might tell me. Have you ever been in one of those situations where people expected a fight, and instead of choosing to fight, you prayed for them? And the louder they got, the calmer you got. And they were so looking for something to push against that when you didn't push back, they almost fell over. That is a victory for peace. And I love, blessed are the peacemakers. They shall be called sons of God, children of God. It's a sweet thing to do. When little kids are angry, and sometimes it works on bigger ones, I love to confuse them. Now, I'll admit I'm sexist about this, and I'll just confess it to you. If it's an angry little girl, I'm as likely as not to smile at her and say, you are so beautiful when you're angry. And that just confuses the daylights. Now, I can't do that with Laura because that would make a mess. Sometimes with a little guy, you want to confuse him. Would you like to hit something? Yes. Well, it can't be me or you. It can't be the other little kid. If we've got a punching bag, if we've got a baseball bat and a soft enough ball, they can hit it. If we got something they can do, like, again, give them an option. We're in Genesis 4. God came to Cain, and he's helping this angry person who's about to mess up. And the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you so angry?" It is a brilliant question. What is right? What's right about this question that God asked Cain? Why are you so angry? And before you answer, let me give you one little hint. The Lord God Almighty is omnipotent and omniscient, all-powerful, and knows everything. God knew already why. He's not asking for information. He's asking for another reason. What makes this a great question? He's angry because God didn't accept his offering, but he's angry at his brother instead of at God. It's like the guy who comes home angry from work and kicks the dog. Dog didn't do it. You've probably heard the ancient story about the guy who worked for a very difficult boss in a very difficult situation. And every day when he came home, he took off his work jacket and hung it on a tree limb outside the house. And finally, one of the neighbors had seen this so long he couldn't stand the not knowing anymore and asked him, "What in the world are you doing hanging your coat on a tree limb outside the house?" It's symbolic. I put up with stuff that makes me angry at work all day, and I don't want to bring a bit of it into my house, so I hang it here with my coat, and it doesn't come in with me. I love that. That's smart. Any comments on why this is a great question? Yes, sir. One of my father's favorite sayings is, "Your mirror's broken." And he'll use that saying when a person loses perspective and can't look at self honestly anymore. His mirror's broken. Anger tends to shut down or at least diminish thinking. And if you can get an angry person to take a minute, step back, calm just a little bit, and think, what an advantage for everybody. Want to get them to think biblically again. Are you rightly angry, or is this a misunderstanding? If you are angry, are you angry with the right person? Even if you're angry with the correct person, are you proportionately angry? Most of us know somebody who has the same level of anger if you cut his arm off or you buttered the wrong side of the bread. That can't be healthy. That can't be intelligent. It can't be functional for us. So we want it to be proportionate. And then the next deal is, okay, you own your feelings. I'll give you your feelings. You're entitled to them always. No matter how angry you feel, what are you going to do next? Have you ever heard anybody make that weird statement? I'm a calm person. I'm a good person. It takes a lot to make me angry, but when you push me too far, I'm just not responsible for what I do anymore. That is the devil's own lie. We don't need to use that one because we're still responsible before God for what we do. And that one will get us in a boatload of trouble. The Lord asked the perfect question, why is your face fallen? Countenance fallen? If I'm angry, how will you know it? If I'm really angry, how will you know it? Sometimes by face. Now, mine is plain enough that you might not know for a little bit, but you'd know eventually. I was born with a version of these ears, and then they got bigger. As a rule, when I get angry, they glow red. Now, sometimes they glow red when I'm embarrassed, and sometimes they glow red when I'm not feeling real well, so got to be a little careful there, but that would be an indicator. How else would you know? Frown on face, a scowl. Sometimes it's the eyes. If looks could kill, you'd be dead twice. How else do you know when somebody's angry? Attitude. You can't say good morning right. If you give me a $20 bill, why wasn't it a $50? Why did it have a pinhole in it? There's always some objection to what's going on there. Now, ladies, again, I've already confessed to being what I am. You sometimes have intuition and you pick up on anger way early. And I'd be slow on the uptake. So maybe one of the things that we want to do as Christians in helping one another is if you notice somebody hurting and in anger, you might tell the appropriate person who might be able to inquire and say, what's going on? What do we need to do? And sometimes you'll try that and you find out your question is premature. They're too angry in the moment to give you an answer. Or sometimes it is the perfect question at the perfect time. You find out there's something going on and we might be able to help with it some way or another. So again, thinking about Hebrews 10:24, consider one another, let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works. That sort of presupposes we know one another and we know how to encourage. I think sometimes when we know one another, we know how to read and sometimes how to react to what we read. The Lord gives Cain hope. If you do well, will you not be accepted? And then the Lord gives him a warning. Sin lies at the door. Its desire is to rule over you. This is dangerous, but I trust you because you've been so nice to me. Have you ever been in or seen an angry situation that got diffused because somebody showed hope and love? Have you ever been in an angry situation that calmed down because somebody offered hope and love? Think about that one, and if you'd like to share it with us, no names are required. I've seen situations like that time and again, and some of them really sweet. One of them was a counseling situation with a couple. And she is as angry as she can be because he's working 2 jobs and he's never home. And as things unfolded, I don't get things right too often, but I had a good day with the Lord's help. I asked the husband, do you hear what she's telling you? And he says, she's angry with me because I'm working 2 jobs and I'm never home. No. I mean, do you hear what has to come before that? She wants more time with you. You being home with her is important. You and the Lord are somewhere at the center of her life. I thought he was going to spit on the floor. I don't mean to be gross, but he wasn't buying a bit of it till the big old tears began to roll down her face. And he looked over at his wife, Kevin, and said, is that how you feel? She wet her shoes crying. He wet his shoes crying. I didn't know you still loved me. Those kind of moments are rare, rare moments. But sometimes we can reframe. We can help people take a step back, not lying, not calling good evil and evil good, but look at the situation a little differently, a little better from a higher plane. And it can help us in a huge way. There's two other things we have to do with God and Cain here, to be fair with you. Since the Lord is all-knowing and the Lord is all-powerful, Cain listened to the Lord and he repented. He got his anger and jealousy under control and he became a great person. Not even close. They're out in the field and he kills his brother. What does that tell us about helping angry people? Yes, sir. Glad you made up. I shouldn't tell you this. There's an outlet in Luverne. We were down there to see my parents for Thanksgiving. I went into the little outlet because I'd seen some stuff in there before that kind of piqued my interest. I asked the lady, "What is the biggest T-shirt in this place?" And she said, 9X. They had multiple choice 9X T-shirts in 4 different colors. I bought a gray one. That is forevermore a big boy shirt. I know some counselor type people who would cut an extra neck hole in that shirt and would say, for folks, family who fight, I'm going to put you both in the same shirt and you have to wear it part of a day before you make up. I'm not that bold. What does Cain's response to the Lord's effort tell us about helping angry people? Oh, we do learn later that he is indeed his brother's keeper, even though he didn't want to be. I'm afraid that one of the reasons sometimes we don't step in and help folks is we know there's a low likelihood of success. Try anyway, please. The Lord didn't win the day here. And the reason the Lord didn't win the day is the Lord gives everybody choice while we're in the flesh. We get to pick our attitude, we get to pick our words, we get to pick our behavior, and Cain picked poorly. Whose fault is that? It's Cain's fault. And historically in church work, I can't tell you what a high percentage of my encounters with people, good people, who've tried hard and didn't win the situation because somebody made bad choice, feeling guilty and getting a terrible case of the what ifs. What if I had asked my questions in a different order? What if I'd worn a blue shirt to be calming instead of a green shirt? What if I had done this a day earlier? What if I'd done it a day later? What if I had bought them a zero candy bar before I went to talk to them? And what if will kill you? The devil will run you ragged with what if. What I always want to say to good people is, did you pray before you went? Did you try in love, in a spirit of meekness, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted? If you did that, then you fulfill the law of Christ. You followed the example of God from Genesis chapter 4. You did well. And please don't let the fact that other people made bad choices keep you from being grateful that you made that effort. I want to support effort and to appreciate the fact that you tried. Helping angry people. Anger itself is not sin. Anger is emotion, but it may not be a primary emotion. It may be secondary. There's a bit of literature that says basically there are 4 triggers to extreme anger. You don't have to believe this. I do. I think it makes sense. And it's called the gift view of anger, which I love, Kevin, because it's so ironic. Anger's not usually a gift. 4 causes of big anger. Sometimes the cause is guilt. I felt guilty, or whatever went on made me remember a guilty episode from the past. The I, inferiority. I felt inferior. I felt like you were talking down to me and I was being diminished, marginalized as a person. The F, fear. In a week or two, we'll talk about fear. Why do some people live in fear, and how do you help people not live in fear? The Bible has tons to say about that. How are you scared? And then the T, of course, is trauma, big harm. So that gift view of anger. One of the best things to do with that gift acronym is to think about it personally. When I get angry, is one of those in play? And which one is it? And what can I do about it? What can God help me do with it? Because if He can help me, I surely need to let Him. You know, it's good to be slow to anger. There are a jillion different. My beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. The wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. He who is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who is short of spirit, impulsive, exalts folly. The wrathful man stirs up strife, but he who is slow to anger allays contention. He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty. He who rules his spirit is better than he who takes a city. How do we help ourselves, and maybe others, be slow to anger? Yes, sir. Okay. Yes, sir.
Your heart was filled with anger. You think to pray. Pray for grace, my brother, that you might oh, how praying prayer will change the night today. The life seems dark and dreary.
That's spot on. Thank you. Being angry all the time will wear you out. I love the weary part of that. Praying rest the weary. And I've always believed that you can't hate somebody and pray for them at the same time. You got to pick one. I don't think dissonance theory, people think they invented that fairly recently. God knew about dissonance theory. It's hard to think opposing thoughts. It's hard to think one way and act another for very long. Something's going to win, something's going to lose, and prayer helps the right thing win. Now, you got to be careful that you can't pray for God to lop off their head. You can't pray for them to get some terrible disease. We're talking about praying in the righteous, upright, loving sort of way. How else can I learn to be slow to anger? Talk about it. Why am I angry? Is this right? What am I likely to do? What is it going to cost me? If it's going to cost me kissing my brother, not worth it. Not going to do that. If it's going to cost me more than the cow's worth, we're not going to court. Have your cow. Feed him. Get him off my land. But you can have him. What else do we do to help ourselves be slow to anger? We got to try not to be angry so that it'll come out better. In my family, we cheat positively. There's some folks I'm not better being around. They drain. I'm not allowed to call them emotional vampires, but that's what they are. And when I'm around certain of those people, all of a sudden my sister will walk by and say, Bill, I need you right now. And she'll grab me by the arm and lead me off. We'll round one corner to get out of sight, and she'll say to me, didn't I do a good rescue? And I'll say, you did. That was professional level rescue. I'll return the favor next time I can. And it works out really well. I was type A. Grew up angry. Had to talk about it and think about it. What is this costing me? How is it paying me? And my bottom line question eventually got to be two things. Do I really want to go to judgment like this? No. And then the other deal is it worth it? No. Wasn't worth it in any way at all. Now, in case we have any doubts about anger and anger responses being learned to some degree, Scripture is going to help us with that, and we're going to be helpful there. Proverbs 22, verses 24 and 25 have helped me. Make no friendship with an angry man. With a furious man, do not go, lest you learn his ways and become like him. And I'm a simple person. I believe if you can learn bad anger responses, we can unlearn them. Now, any of you ever coached soccer, t-ball, baseball, any of that kind of stuff? I was a bad coach, but I tried when the boys were little. My favorite ones to teach were the ones who didn't know anything yet. They would hold a bat where you told them to hold it. They'd choke up like you told them to choke up. They'd position the feet like you told them to position the feet. The ones I had a terrible time with, the ones who already knew, but they were wrong. You had to unteach them. And Kevin, you've seen those little dudes, they've seen the professionals do it, and they want to sling the bat and rotate it. If you're going to hit the ball, the bat is going to get still before you hit the ball. And if you watch the professionals, they do that. They'll wobble it around, but right before the pitch gets there, they have that instant of stillness. If we've learned a bad pattern, talk about it, explore it, find a way to do better. You probably have some people sitting right here now who are legendary for their peacefulness and calm. Okay, if we're in Proverbs 15 in verse 1, I'm thinking there that a soft answer turns away wrath. Grievous words stir up anger. It'll be worded slightly differently in other translations, but I love that. Soft answer, don't escalate the situation. We may have to unlearn some things, and we may have to help people unlearn some things, so we teach them about it to the best of our ability. Being a powerful emotion, Proverbs 29:22. An angry man stirs up strife, a furious man abounds in transgression. There are people who flat out enjoy being mad, and I don't want to help them. I don't want to stoke that fire. I don't want to feed that dog. I want to go back to those super calm people. Find one of them, take them to lunch. How do you do this? What have you learned? What could you tell me? And listen up a storm. It's a good thing. You can even cheat another way if you want to. I like Christian spies, don't like the other kind. If you notice me in my conversations and interactions doing something that's off-putting, that's rude, that somehow pushes people toward anger, the next time you see me, Kevin, yo, Bill, you were having an off moment there. I hope it was just a moment. You did this, and that poked that person. Did you know you were doing that? No. Or, yes, I was having a terrible moment. I actually enjoyed it. And then Kevin will say to me, you're not allowed to enjoy that. This is wrong. Don't do it. And to have that much relationship, to do it for one another, what a sweet thing. That's often something we have to do in our flesh and blood families, but there are family members who are closer than a brother. And when we have somebody honest enough to do that for us, we are really blessed. Now, I also love catching people doing good and saying so. I think I've mentioned that to you right before our next bell rings. We were in Captain D's not long ago. And the woman who came in and ordered was born angry and got worse. There was nothing right on her plate. There was nothing going to be right. The manager rescued his clerk and walked out and talked to the woman. And basically he said, lady, what can we do to make this right? And she told him the truth. Bad grammar. Ain't nothing you can do to make this right. And to his credit, he turned around calmly and went back to work. We waited till the grouchy woman left. I didn't want to encounter her in the line at the door, parking lot. Manager's right behind the counter with his employees. And you know me, I meddle in things often. Manager, could I have a word? Yes, sir. I saw your interaction with that angry woman. Good job. It does my heart good to see a professional at work. I want to feed that in society, in church, in family. When somebody does a good job of keeping cool, calm, being God's person in a difficult moment, commend them. Now, I'm not saying you always do it grandstandy like I did with this guy. That was just too fun. I just did it. Sometimes for some people, you can't do it that way or it ruins it. We just send them a little note that says, I saw you keep your cool and be extra peaceful. You were living Galatians 6, 1 and 2. You blessed me. Love that. Next week, preview. I don't want to do it too close to Christmas, and we're pretty close now. So I think next week we'll talk about helping depressed people. And the number one thing we're going to do on the front end is we can help them by not being depressed ourselves, not joining them. We will use humor, but we will not laugh at depression because it's no laughing matter. It's very serious. There are some things we can do and suggest that help people. We will visit with Elijah right after Mount Carmel. That's where we'll start. When he asked the Lord to take his life and the Lord didn't. You know the funny thing about that story? He asked the Lord to take his life, and not only did the Lord not take his life, the Lord never let him die. He sent a chariot of fire and took him to heaven years and years later. It's just so cool. We'll end with a prayer. Father in heaven, thank you for blessing us. Give us calm spirits. Help us to be peacemakers. Help us to overcome anger and defeat the devil. We thank you for love, for peace, for joy, for family. In Jesus' name, amen.